I gained 25 pounds in my first year as a career firefighter, and that was coming in with certifications as a personal trainer and a nutritionist. And I thought the answer was to do what I learned in my classes and in the academy, which was gear workouts 5 times a week. Turns out that just made fat loss impossible because I never had the energy to be consistent long enough for it to work when I was running 6 calls past midnight every single shift. So in this video, I'm giving you the 3 things I focused on instead of daily cardio, which resulted in me getting in the best shape of my life. Then I went and I shared it with my client Kyle, who went on to lose 140 pounds in the next 18 months using the exact same strategy. And by the way, if you want to get a head start with some of the protocols that we both use to burn fat while working full time, I have them linked for free in the description. Fair warning though, if you use them, this will result in you getting catcalled 10 times more frequently by the other firefighters at the station. Just saying. Now, before any of the other steps make sense, there's one thing you need to understand first, and it's the #1 reason most firefighters never see results no matter how hard they train. And here's the mistake I made for years. I thought that more workouts meant better results, so I stacked gear workouts on top of lifting and everything else I was trying to do. The problem with this was that I never gave it a window to recover in, and I was just piling stress onto my nervous system that was already in overdrive from, I don't know, the regulars that were calling at 2:47 a.m. in the morning for toe pain. You know the ones. Eventually, my body would just hit a wall, and if I'm being honest, I didn't just slow down, I would just quit completely. And that was the real killer of what I was trying to do. It wasn't the single missed workout. It was the fact that I walked away from the whole program altogether. I was either all in or all out. You ever met a firefighter like that before? But in all honesty, how many other things do we treat like that, really? Does it make sense? Like, think about a good incident commander running a working fire. In theory, you shouldn't send the same crew back into the structure fire over and over and over again without rotating them through rehab first. If you have the right staffing on scene, I get it. But I don't think anybody would argue that exhausted firefighters make worse decisions and get hurt more often. So command builds the rotation into the plan from the start. It's also not treated as a reward for finishing a hard task. It's treated as part of how the operation runs. And your fat loss plan needs the same structure. If you never rotate yourself through recovery, how are you supposed to have the energy to go back in on your plan? You just keep pushing until you break down or walk away completely. Recovery isn't a reward you earn after training hard. It's what lets you keep showing up shift after shift. And what I found was that I had to build recovery into the plan like on purpose instead of waiting until my body forced it on me. And that meant that recovery was something that was an active effort, not a passive one, which also meant that I had to treat it as part of the training, not something that I earned once I've done enough. I'd rather train hard twice a week for 10 years straight than train hard every day for 3 weeks and quit. And after a certain point, I had to ask myself, if doing cardio every day isn't even improving my performance, then why the hell am I doing it? What, to just say that I did it? Hey, cool, bro, here's your gold star, dude. Anyways, the truth I found was that when I took out the endless cardio, I was more consistent because I was able to come back more recovered. And like, I'll level with you, I'll be honest, when I made this shift, I was scared that my bottle time would go down, but the opposite happened. It almost doubled because I was able to remove the body fat that had been making things harder the entire time. And the thing is, it wasn't just me. My client Gail spent years jumping between extreme programs, maybe losing a little bit here and there, but eventually, quickly, he'd burn out and then have to start all over. And the second that we backed off cardio 5 days a week and gave him permission to do less, he dropped 20 pounds and he's kept it off ever since. Gail, if you see this, you're a stud and your crew's lucky to have a captain who leads from the front like you do. All right, now, taking a recovery first approach helped me stay consistent for long periods of time, but it didn't mean that I shouldn't train at all. That is how we end up with recliner warriors. Am I talking to you, dude? So next I'm gonna break down the exact workout structure I found that got me stronger than ever before, and it only took 2 sessions per week for 40 minutes at a time. I remember when I first got started, I was doing the bodybuilder workouts alongside the cardio, and the problem was these were time consuming and they didn't translate to lift assists, overhaul, or throwing ladders. And I ran into the same problem as the cardio thing. There's a point where every extra workout was adding wear and tear on joints that were already taking a beating from the job. I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty, but this is something we call the law of diminishing returns, and it's the reason that I was overtrained and under-recovered. Essentially what this law means in simple terms is that after a certain amount of effort, the return you get on that effort starts to level off or even starts to go down. So knowing this, I had to ask a question. Why does this happen, and where is the freaking sweet spot? I mean, the answer can't be to not train at all, right? And that's when I began to think of it from the lens of being a paramedic. And I know, some of you are gonna think that being a medic is gross, but I just think you're jealous. But even if you're not a medic, you probably understand the idea of the effective dose. For example, if you give a patient 30 mics of fentanyl for pain management, nothing's gonna happen. But if you give that same patient 300 mics, well, now Meemaw's in a coma and we need to grab the Narcan. There is an effective dose that will solve the problem, and your exercise routine as a firefighter works the same way. And here's what actually worked once I stopped listening to influencers and I started paying attention to my lifestyle and what was practical. I did 2 full body workouts a week, 40 minutes each, built around mobility and longevity instead of just sweating for the sake of sweating. These were movements like knee over toe lunges, Cuban press, and single leg deadlifts that protect the joints this job destroys, which are your ankles, your knees, your low back, and your shoulders, which usually come from things like lift assists and overhaul. In fact, I bet you can name a firefighter you work with that has issues in each one of those categories, if it's not you. And here's the cool thing. If you miss a day at the station because calls come in and you're too busy, you can just move it to another day because the whole plan doesn't collapse when you weren't trying to train every single day to begin with. This is the effective dose, not the maximum dose. It is the sweet spot where it isn't so much that you can't recover from it, but it is enough that you can keep making progress over time. And if you're skeptical, well, I mean, so is my client Mike. I actually went to the fire academy with this guy and he came up learning the exact same things that I did. When he came into the program, he was on full-time already, he was in paramedic school, and he had a young family. There was no version of his life where 5 days a week was happening. So we put him on this exact 2-day routine, and lo and behold, he lost 25 pounds in his first 90 days. Now, there's one last thing cardio was doing to me that I didn't even realize at first, and it was killing my diet every single shift. And here was the mechanism that nobody ever took the time to explain to me. When you do hard cardio, your body burns through its stored muscle sugar first. Once that tank runs low, your brain sends out a hunger not talking about my dating life, hunger signal because it wants you to eat and to refill those stores. That's not a lacking willpower problem. That's just biology doing what it does. And the problem is you're already a firefighter, I think, which means you probably get hit with unpredictable hunger from missed meals, I don't know, late calls, and long incidents. If you add a hard cardio session on top of that, well, now you've got 2 things fighting your deficit instead of 1, and you end up starving, tired, and reaching for whatever's fast and whatever's easy. Hello, gas station taquitos, I still miss you. Think of it like this. You're already trying to manage one fire, which is the hunger created by being in a calorie deficit while working an unpredictable job. A job that includes the missed lunches, the late calls, the interrupted meals, the bad sleep, and the stress. Now, that fire is already burning, and it's gonna keep burning. But then you go and add a brutal cardio session that drains a bunch of stored carbohydrates and ramps up your drive to eat, and now you just started a second fire. And then we wonder why at 9 p.m. we're standing in the firehouse kitchen eating everything we can get our hands on. And the truth is, it wasn't the cardio that made you fat, it made a second fire that was harder to control. So, here's what I did instead. I cut the extra cardio and I just replaced it with walking 10 to 12,000 steps a day, shift days included. The nice thing about walking is that it keeps your body fat burning instead of muscle, and it doesn't spike your hunger the way a hard cardio session does. And that shift alone made it easier to follow a simple calorie deficit and hit my protein goals, which were the only 2 things I found I needed to focus on anyways. Think a 300 to 500 calorie deficit and around 0.75 grams per pound of goal body weight for protein. The truth is, I didn't have time to focus on dialing every macronutrient and learning complicated calculations to make my diet perfect because it wasn't practical, especially during busy shifts. And honestly, when I first tried this, I thought it was too simple to actually work. And that's a sentiment that was shared by my client Dave. He was very skeptical, but he gave this exact program a shot. He replaced his assault bike workouts with more walking and focused on hitting just a moderate deficit and his protein goal. And guess what? He lost 25 pounds in the next 16 weeks. Okay, let's do a quick recap of the strategy and let's just keep it simple. Getting rid of cardio helps your recovery, which is what keeps you in the game long enough to see the results. And then to build on that, we need to do 2 full body sessions of weightlifting a week. That is going to be the effective dose that builds you up instead of breaking you down. And then you add in walking plus a moderate deficit and focusing on protein. That is what makes the nutrition something you can actually survive on when you're on shift to see these results. Now, here's the thing. None of this works if it just sits in your notes app. This was never about the information. It's about implementing it and following through when a rough shift tries to test you with a full day on the couch. I've coached over 1,000 firefighters through this exact system, and most of them lost 20 to 40 pounds, improved their mobility, and doubled their energy at home in their first 16 weeks. And if you want help putting this together for your specific schedule and your station, that is exactly what I do. There's a full program breakdown and an application for one-on-one coaching linked in the description. Now, if you want the full explanation of the exact numbers you should use for your nutrition when you're on a busy shift, I've got that video linked for you right here. Remember, being in shape is part of the uniform. I'll see you in the next one.